document here, and I'm going to design a sales page for my new web application design workshop. So the first thing I did was hit Command Backspace, and that filled my background color here onto the entire layer. So it was transparent, now it's white. Alright, I want to start with a texture on the background. And I'm just going to go through all of my patterns. I have them from subtlepatterns.com. They're awesome. I'm going to run through, and there's actually a light pattern in here that I think I want to use. It's kind of a grid layout. There we go. But that doesn't have a ton of style, so I'm going to see if I can improve it. So I'm going to duplicate the layer with Command J, and then hold down Command and click the Create New Layer button. Select both layers by pressing the Shift key and Command E to merge them together, and then Command I to invert. Command L to bring up levels. Sorry, that's a lot of things. You can also get to levels, image adjustments levels. Alright, so in levels, this is the amount of each shade, and so you can see there's no white, you know, and then there's tiny bits of medium gray, and then a lot of really dark gray. And then I can drag these up, and that's going to brighten certain areas. And I'm not going to use this exact pattern, but this is, you'll see in a second what I have in mind. And then I'm going to create a new layer underneath it. So it was Command and then clicking New Layer, and get rid of that. I'm going to find a blue color that I like. Let's see, maybe kind of a blue-gray. Oops, that works. Option or Alt Backspace in this case fills with a foreground color. I'm going to turn this layer back on and set it to Overlay. Oops, wrong layer. I want to set my pattern layer to Overlay. And then just tone down the opacity some. Let's see. Okay, that's decent. But this color is actually too blue, so I'm going to go a little more into the grays. And then Option Backspace again to fill it in. That's about what I want. Okay, now my page is going to be 1,000 pixels wide, and so the way I like to do that is I want some guides, 1,000 pixels centered, and so I'm going to do the marquee tool, fixed size, width of 1,000 pixels, the height doesn't matter, and I'll just click anywhere. Create a new layer, make sure it's above my background, and then Command Backspace to fill it with something. Then I'm going to select everything with Command A and grab my Move tool, and then use these centering options to center it on the screen. And then Command D will deselect. As you can see, keyboard shortcuts are really important. And then Command R will bring up my rulers, and I can click on one of these rulers and just drag it over, and it's going to snap to that 1,000 pixel edge like I want it to. And because it'll do it on whatever layer I have selected. And Command R again will get rid of those rulers because I don't need them. Okay, let's see. So let's just make this background a little taller. Actually, scrap that. I'm going to delete this layer and press U to bring up my shape tool. And I'm going to grab the rounded rectangle tool. A radius of 5 pixels is fine. And draw this with rounded corners. And we'll make it pretty tall, because I have a feeling based on the content that our page is going to be quite long. Set that background to white. And for a drop shadow, it pre-filled some stuff. I want the 90-degree light source. I'm actually going to check global light and then change it to 90 degrees. So that'll set the global light for everything to 90 degrees, which is what I want. And drop shadows there. So it's a fairly subtle drop shadow, just around on everything. And now I want to bring in a browser, and it would take a lot of effort to design that browser, so I'm going to go over to Chrome and show you. Hold on. Sorry, I'm over on my other screen right now. Let's go to, oh, not Gumroad. Let's try Google. Well, I have a search bar right here. So let's search for Safari browser PSD. And Premium Pixels should come up as one of the options. Oops, that is not the one. This one. There you go. A nice PSD, you can download it. You'll have to create an account with them, but it's totally worth it. And I have that PSD already open. Here I have it. There's the PSD as it comes in from Premium Pixels. And I'm going to press F to toggle out of full screen mode. And then just drag this browser in. And then drag it around. And actually, I wanted the screen as well. So I'm going to drag both of them in together so they stay locked together where I want them. And then they got nested kind of strangely. So let's pull that up and then delete that one because it's not needed. Alright, let's zoom out a little bit. And this is a little bigger than I want. And there's a little too much going on. So, for example, this is just a simple design element, so we can get rid of the search box. We can get rid of the downloads link. That's probably good. We're going to change this text to say, let's go to nathanbarry.com. This doesn't have to be super realistic. And I'm going to gray it out. So I pressed V to switch to my move tool, and then the number 3 to drop the opacity down to 30%. And the fave icon can go away as well. We're just trying to make this nice and simple. And the plus and the separator can go away. And let's just say workshop. Okay. It's kind of annoying that it's not centered, but a single click should fix that. And then I can always just double check. There we go. Now it's centered. Everything's as it should be. Except that pure black is awfully strong, so let's lighten that up a little bit. Okay, and then I want to pull this in. Maybe to there. Haven't exactly decided yet. And that didn't actually change our browser base, which is that background. And it's in a smart object, so I needed to open it up. And this is going to be a little bit funky. So I need to pull this in, but I'm not sure exactly how much to do. I'm going to try to get an idea by putting these two documents over each other. Let's just save that. Not quite. So I'm going to switch to my pen tool, and then I can use my arrow keys to nudge it a couple pixels at a time, or 1 pixel at a time. Okay, that's pretty good. Put the full screen icon back in, and center that again. And I think this address box needs to come over just a tiny bit. Yeah, it does. I'm not going to worry about getting this pixel perfect, but we want it close. That looks decent. Okay, we've got kind of this little browser window. I'm going to combine both of these. And drop that in there. Okay. On here, I'm going to create a new shape because I want to darken this a little bit. This browser window is white, and I want it to sit on just a light gray. And I can press the Option key and hold between these two layers and clip it together like that. Okay. We're starting to get there. So now let's fill in this browser with something. I've got a book cover right here, and I'm going to keep this in the other screen so I can pull it over more easily, but you'll see what I mean in just a second. I'm going to pull over all these details. And before I do that, I'm going to select in this document where I want to drop it in. There we go. Oh, I lost all my text. Undo, come back, and select the correct layers this time, or all the correct layers, and drop that in. And then I'm going to group this and then create a layer mask for that group. And then unlink the layer mask so now I could drag around my group if I wanted, and the layer mask would stay in place. Initially I'm gonna just drag all of this in to resize it because I want it to fit a little differently. Yeah, I do. Okay. And then I don't need this by Nathan Barry, that's kind of obvious, so let's just change this to masterclass. Or workshop, we'll say workshop. Okay. And we'll go bigger. It's not much bigger. Let's go a lot bigger. Okay. Oops. And this you got to make sure. Here I have the group selected. There I have the layer mask selected, or the group mask. So you just have to make sure it's the correct one. Then I'm using the Shift arrow key to nudge it up and down. What we should do is get really particular, because I resized this box. Inside the browser element here, you can see that we're sitting on partial pixels, and that's not good. So you got to zoom in really close and see that that's not complete. So I'm going to just Command T and nudge that over until it's sitting on full pixels, so that line won't be blurry anymore. But then this one is. So I'm going to select all of these here and just drag it over, and if I use the arrow keys, it'll let me get really precise. And then that's not good. I'll do the same up here. Okay, I should have just moved them all together. It was a mistake in improperly holding down the Shift key that made that issue. Okay, that's pretty well lined up. You would want to go through and do that with those lines as well, which we'll do just really quickly. So pull that up and then just drag it till it's on a full pixel. And that's the outside, so this here is inside, and we'll nudge that up, and I'm just going to drag this one up so it matches on a full pixel right there. And the arrows we're just going to leave alone for now. And Okay. Now I'm going to grab this whole browser window and center it. And we'll center it. Cool. I want to add a stroke to this. That's going to give it that line across the bottom. 1 pixel. Outside is fine. And we'll do a light gray, but you want it a little darker than our base there. There we go. I like that look. Okay. I've got a whole bunch of text over here in a Google Docs, and I'm just going to start pulling this over. Actually, before we do that, this is really tall, and it just doesn't need to be that tall. So let's go up to there, and then I'm going to delete this layer mask and just regenerate it by selecting command click on the shape there, and then perfect. Then I'll select all these layers inside and nudge them up. That's much better. Then I'm going to bring the browser window down so that I can, from Google Docs, pull in my header text. And I'm going to use Open Sans for this. And so I want to make sure that all caps is turned off, because that looks lame with that particular font, and then drop down the size. And F to go full screen so I can pan around by holding the spacebar like I want to. That works for now. I'm just going to center that. I'm going to go with the dark gray, actually. Can always change it later. Okay, so that's our basic header. Now I need to put in some other details about the workshop. Maybe what time it is, things like that. Date and time, let's do that underneath. Just click, and for that, yeah, I'll use Open Sans. And let's see, it's going to be on March 29th, 2013 at, we'll say from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Let's make that a lot smaller. Not quite that small. Join me live on March 19th. And then this part's more important, so I'm going to darken it a little bit more. But not red. Red would be terrible. There we go. I like to add a tiny little drop shadow to my text. And really I'm just giving it a little bit of an inset look. So it's drop shadow is going to come down 1 pixel. 100% white. And it's hard to see, but it makes a little bit of a subtle difference. I'm going to hold down Option and drag the effect onto my title up at the top to add the same thing up there. Okay, now I've got a whole bunch of text actually that's going to go in here that you can see right there. So I'm going to start by copying over this what you'll learn part. So T for my text tool, and we're going to drag kind of a sidebar area and just paste that in. And I want medium gray, 14 point, and then this, our line height is really high, so I'm going to tone that down to 24 point maybe. 18 point, 18 is too small, we'll say 22. Okay, we lost our bullet points, but those are much easier to recreate in code, and so I'll just add those back in when we actually go to code it. There's no reason to get it perfect right now. Now I'm going to bring over some more text and just draw a new text box. And I've got even more text to pull in. Oops. Okay. That's quite a bit. Now that we've got some basic text on the page, it's time to go through and format it. So I'm going to start just by making this lead-in paragraph a bit larger. Let's go to 18 points. And then the line height needs to increase as well. Just try out a couple. Let's go with maybe 28 points. You can see you can just click on any of these and drag and get a little scrubbing bar, so you can change that. And then I'm going to do some headers, 24 points each. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's just something that I'm totally going to recreate in code anyway. But it's worth getting a basic feel for how it's going to go together. And I think that, yep, there's more text down there. There we go. Keep making our headers larger. And then actually, I've got this box over here, so let's format that. 24 points on that header, and then this is kind of a subheader, so we'll go to 18. And then this is also a subheader, so 18 points is good. And then this will have bullets in the later design. It's not worth the effort in Photoshop. So what I've got is all the space down here, and I think I'm going to put the purchase button there. Let's see. Oops. Okay, so move tool, selecting the path, and then I can hold down Command and Shift to select all of these little elements, all the anchor points, and drag them out. Okay, now I'm going to do some kind of divider to separate this content from the other content. So I'm going to put in a box. I'm going to put it in between these two layers, so it'll sit underneath our main layer and be clipped. So it'll sit underneath this header layer and be clipped to the background. And I'm going to clear the layer styles that got put on it by default. Let's try a really light blue-gray maybe. I always just play with the colors until it looks something like what I want. And I think I need to go a little lighter. That looks decent. And then I want to pull this text back a little bit to give it more margin. So come down and grab this handle and drag it in. I'm just eyeballing it off of to make those edges match roughly. Another thing to do is if you're going for perfect alignment and everything of your paragraphs, which I'm not really here because I'm going to go to code really soon, but one thing to do is to go set your paragraphs palette, which I just lost. There we go. And you can turn off hyphenate because CSS, by default doesn't hyphenate. So by turning it off, you won't be hyphenating words, and the line breaks and everything will be a little bit more accurate. Okay, so I'm going to pull over all this text. So cut and paste, and then I'm going to do a separate box here and duplicate this one because it has the width and height that I already want, and then make it a little shorter. Okay, now I'm going to do a new box, maybe we'll do a 2 pixel radius, so it's a really small radius, and this is going to be where our purchase button is. And I don't know, something like that. And this is going to be white. And double click on it, pull up the layer styles, drop shadow, distance of 1 pixel, size of 5, tone down that, or turn down the opacity and turn off the stroke. Okay. So center this main box, and I'm actually going to drag these in to give a little bit more margin. Okay. And then I want to do a divider, which I'm going to do with a new line. And I can hold down the shift key to draw a straight line. So normally I draw a line and it could be slightly off a tiny bit, but if I hold down the shift key, it snaps to, I believe, 45-degree increments, which is what I want. It put a stroke on there by default because that's what the style I have selected right now, and so I'm going to clear that off. And you can see that my line is not exactly on the pixel grid, and so I'm going to Command T to open up the free transform, and then use my arrow keys to nudge it down until it's on the line. Then I'm going to select just a slightly darker color, and then add a 1 pixel white drop shadow. So I need to set the blend mode to normal. Use white there. Distance of 1, size of 0. It's just a 1 pixel line coming down. Normally I'd need to make sure it lines up on the sides and all of that, but actually I still do. I was thinking it was going to be clipped, but it's not. So there's a tiny bit, I see that there's 1 stray pixel there. Makes it look a tiny bit blurred. And then this side doesn't matter because it's being clipped off. Okay, so that's going to separate between our what you'll learn section, which is kind of the the content of the class, and then I'm going to have this limited seating paragraph. So I'm just going to duplicate and get rid of all that text and drag that one down. And then this one, just want to line it up. and shorten it up. And then I'm using Shift and the arrow key to bump that down. Let's see, let's go further and then move this paragraph further down too. Okay, this box here needs to be quite a bit smaller because we need to maintain some decent white space around the edges. And then you can get rid of all of those extra line breaks, and this should be 18 pixels. Or sorry, 24 pixels, because it's one of our main headers. Okay. Now let's do a purchase button. And I'm actually going to do square corners on this button, or a 1 pixel radius. Yeah, we'll do a 1 pixel radius. And I'm just going to do this to make sure that I kind of match the size of the text, roughly. And I'm going to need to pull that text in a tiny bit. Okay. Because this is overstretching and makes it a little uneven. And the text on our button, let's say reserve your seat for $2.99. Let's make that white, 18 pixels, and that's actually going to clip. Let's just say reserve your seat. And we can play with this later, but maybe 20. Just playing around with the exact numbers. And then I've got this text centered, so I can click on this button, or command click on the shape for the button, and then press V to switch to my new move tool, and then just make sure that's centered. And that looks good. So then all these boxes can be shortened up. And since it's a rounded rectangle, even though it's only a slight radius, I need to select all 4 of these bottom points and drag it up. And do the same thing on our bottom box. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to try a green button of sorts for this. Just to make it'll be the only green on the page. Just to make it stand out more. I'm just going to pick something. It's not worth spending too much time on. And then do a stroke, and I want the stroke to be a little bit darker. And I'm just going to do 1 pixel to the outside. And then I'm going to do a drop shadow that comes down 3 pixels, and I just want to give a little height to this button. And so I'm going to make it look a bit darker. Bump up that opacity. Oh, there's something weird going on. Because my stroke's to the outside, it's making my button look funny, and so I'm going to move my stroke to the inside. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to do an inner glow, so I get a little bit around all of the sides. Set that to white and just tone down the opacity. And then an inner shadow, because I want a stronger line, a stronger highlight across the top. And that needs to be 2 because it needs to stick out underneath my inside stroke. If I did just 1, it wouldn't show up because it's covered up by the stroke. And And you know, something else is our stroke, or our drop shadow is quite a bit lighter than or darker, excuse me, than our stroke, and that's causing it to look blurry on the bottom. So we'll just lighten that up. And I'm going to do a slight gradient as well. And I'm just going to set the blend mode to overlay and keep this black to white gradient, and then just really tone it down to 10 pixels. And then that's looking good. Let's save the document before I lose my work. And I'm just going to call this workshop. And let's add a, oops, I moved the button on accident. Let's add a drop shadow to this text. 1 pixel, 0 pixels. So that makes the text look like it's coming off the screen, or off the button. And I want to make it look indented. So I'm going to turn off global light and change that to minus 90 degrees. And then really tone down the opacity. That looks great. And you know, we're doing pretty well. Let's add a little bit more up here. So let's go into our browser window group. And I'm going to add some little bits of text. And let's see, what can we talk about? Little benefits of it being a online workshop, or little details about it. So I'm going to add just a bit of text, and I'm going to use a handwriting font that I like that's called Architect's Daughter, and you can find this free online. Just do a Google search for it. And let's see, what should we say? Watch later with the included recording. Okay, 24 pixels is way too big. Let's just do 14. We need to tone down our line height to say 18, and then I just want to right align this. Say no need for plane tickets or no need for plane tickets or uncomfortable hotel beds. That seems like a good selling point for doing an online workshop. Let's say all online. Okay, you can see I was adding these line breaks in manually, and it just makes it awkward trying to figure out, you know, as I change the text where it should break. So I'm gonna copy all that text and then get rid of that text box, and then just click and drag this time. Instead of just clicking, I clicked and dragged, and now I can it will automatically wrap for me. And let's put something on this other side. Ask questions, get your designs reviewed, connect with other designers. I'm just trying to point out some of the benefits of a live class. Again, I'm going to turn off -8 because I don't like that. Connect with other designers. Cool. That looks good for now. What I want to do now is have some little arrows pointing. Let's see. I have to decide whether they should point into the workshop or out from it at the benefits. and we could try both if you are interested. So let's create a new layer, switch to a brush. I actually already have this selected. So I'm going to grab one of these dry media brushes. Where are they? They come with Photoshop. Dry media brushes right there. And I've got one of them selected. One of these kind of grungy looking ones. Let's go with that one. Just give you an idea of what it looks like. And I'm going to start, pull my brushes palette, and then just start tweaking it. So let's see, let's bring the size way down, maybe 8 pixels, and just get a feel for what that would look like. That's kind of overly styled. What if we turn off scattering? No, that's still looking weird. Texture. Ooh, so that now doesn't have enough going on. So let's jump into the texture and see. No, I don't want to try a new pattern necessarily. Escape out of that. There we go. So I actually just turned off texture each tip, and that would be pretty good. So I'm drawing on this new layer and then just hitting undo when I don't like it. And so I'm going to pull this down to 3 pixels and give it a try again. Let's go up a little bit, maybe to 4 pixels. Okay, that's a decent looking arrow. I'm happy with it. So now I'm going to pick my color, a light gray. And I'm actually not going to draw these arrows by hand like that, because actually that one looks decent. I was going to tell you that they don't look good when I do that, but that one looks decent. So let's name this layer. I'll show you another way to do it that I like, is to use the pen tool. So hit the P character on your keyboard, and then you're just going to click, and then click and hold, and that's going to let you draw a path. And so you can see that coming in there. And then I'm going to use the Option key to convert this to an angle point. So this first one had a curve. You can see this one does not have a curve. And then what I'm going to do is, with my brush selected, go to Paths, and then right click and go to Stroke Path, and Simulate Pressure is turned on. And you can see that got a nice stroke to it. The only thing I'm missing is I didn't draw the last line to my arrow, and so I can just draw that in. I'll show you on the next one why I didn't. So we can come over here, let's just say arrow 2, and create a new layer. You'll see that since this all has to connect, if I wanted to draw the arrow, actually I'm going to click and hold and add a little curve to our arrow. I was going to show you something. So without that, if I just clicked, I need to be able to get this side here, and I can't do that directly, so you'd see that I'd have to come back and then over and then kind of nudge this back into place, and that's okay. It's just kind of my preferred method to draw them separately. Anyway, I'm going to do it with a curve instead. And I can come back and tweak any of these handles by holding down the Control key or the Command key and selecting them, and then Paths, Stroke Path. And I can turn off that path, switch back to my pen tool, and then just add in that missing piece. So there you go. So this arrow actually looks slightly out of place now. So I'm going to get rid of it, duplicate this, and bring it up and just rotate it slightly so it looks a little different. And nudge a few things around and save that. So we've got header, background texture, just kind of reviewing everything. This says the live event. That's good. The text details and exact formatting will work out with CSS. A purchase button, and that looks good.